Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share, all the stuff. Really excited for our guest today, Matt Vetter. He is out of Detroit. He's in the construction business, runs a construction company of his own for the last 5 years, but been in the construction industry for 25 years, a long time. Has a beautiful wife, 3 boys. The oldest is 15. He says this surprises him. How did that happen? But anyway, amazing guy. Thanks for being on today, Matt.
Angela, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's go back to, I don't know if we want to go back 25 years. What got you into construction?
So I started in my late high school years working on a residential crew. I was the low man on the totem pole. I moved lumber around job sites. I later came to learn that there was no purpose for me moving that lumber. I would pile it in one spot and I'd have to move it to another spot and put it in another pile. And that was my day-to-day existence after school. The money attracted me, truth be told, right? I was a young kid. I had no responsibilities whatsoever. The money was great back then, and I got to be outside. I worked with a couple buddies. I kind of just fell in love with the industry. I really fell in love with the idea of being able to construct, to build something with my own 2 hands, quote unquote, and then present a finished product to somebody. At that time, it was homes, and that was just a cool feeling. Like, here's your new house, and to see people's faces light up when they walk in, that kind of grabbed me from the very onset. I won't bore you to tears with all the in between, but fast forward quite a long time, and I'm still in construction. Obviously, I'm in the commercial side now, but it's still that same feeling I get. Now we're building, office buildings and warehousing and different product type, but you still get that kind of tug on the heartstrings when you can hand over a building, because now instead of being a home, it's an investment for people. Like, it's a massive investment at times, and to take that fiduciary duty that we feel and turn it into something that's going to provide jobs or provide housing or whatever it may be. It's an intrinsic benefit of the industry. And I love it.
That's so awesome. I love that. Very cool. And then you got into, it's a Schafer, right? Construction.
Yep.
And now you're the owner and president. What got you into Schafer? And, in the last 5 years, how has the entrepreneurship journey been?
So I started my first company actually when I was 9.
Oh, wow.
It was a recycling company before recycling companies came and picked up your stuff from your house. And that's a different story, but I've always had that bug, right? And I've owned different residential companies along the way. In 2008, 2009, when everything got really upside down, I had an opportunity to kind of shift gears. That's when I moved from residential work into commercial. I started a consulting company doing construction work for hire. And I met Stan Schafer, who founded Schafer Construction in the late 90s. I met him then and did some consulting work for him. Just a good guy. We kept our relationship going. Over the years, I went and worked for someone else for a short time, and that was a horrible mistake. I'm a terrible employee. I want to be the guy at the top. So anyways, I came back to Brighton here, where we're at, Brighton, Michigan. Worked out a deal with Stan, came on board as a partner. And over the last 5 years, like you said, I've worked my way up, and now Stan's actually retiring at the end of this year. So I've taken over the complete helm, and it's my ship now to steer.
Wow, that's awesome. So in all that journey, tell us a little bit about, what have you found what are some success tips that you found that helped you kind of go from where you were to where you are and where you're going?
It's the entrepreneurial fire, right? You have to be gritty, especially in my industry, in construction. It is a rough and tumble industry as a whole. Everything from the economic climate to the people involved to the equipment involved. It's things break down every single day. We hear about the concept of test days a lot through Andy Frisella. We have test days every day. There's always something that explodes. Something always is on fire when I get here in the morning, and you have to develop that gritty determination very, very early if you want to succeed in a leadership level in the construction world. There's plenty of other spots There's lots of necessary people in this industry that can punch in and punch out. And I need those people. We need those people. But to get to a leadership level, you have to thicken your skin, and it has to be really, really, really fast, because it will beat you down if you let it. Now, if you don't, and you can kind of, brush that stuff off and keep moving, there's a world of opportunity here. And it's a lot of fun, but you got to be gritty. You got to be tough.
That sounds good. And where do you think the grit comes from? You said at 9 you had a recycling company. Were your parents entrepreneurs? Did they have the grit? Where did all that come from?
So they weren't entrepreneurial originally. My dad worked in finance. My mom made the awesome choice to stay home with my brothers and I and raise us. My dad had a shift in his professional life about the time I was in high school to an entrepreneurial minded venture. The recycling thing, I don't know. I wanted to make some money. I thought it was a good idea. I pulled my stupid little wagon around my subdivision, and I'd charge people, a quarter for their milk jugs, and a couple pennies for their newspapers. Obviously, it didn't make me a wealthy man like I had planned at that point in time. But I just really, I think it came from my first job in construction. I worked for a small company. The guy I worked for had spent a career at a logistics company, and he was miserable, hated it. He quit, and he just decided, I'm going to learn how to build houses. Kind of wild. But I watched him do it, and I watched him be his own boss. And I remember thinking as a 19-year-old kid, like, holy cow, that's amazing. This dude gets to set his own hours. He gets to set his own pay scale. He's got whatever he wants to do. He can create it. And that just kind of punched me in the gut. And I was like, this is feasible, right? It's not just a thing in the movies. And as I kept growing and growing in my career and just personally, it just became an overwhelming urge. Like, I can do this, and again, like I mentioned, it's reached the point now where like I'm unemployable, 100% unemployable, because I know what's possible when you step outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah, that makes sense. So as you went through that, did you find there was a shift in one of the things? I know we're in Arte, obviously together. Was there a shift in associations throughout all of that? Or did you just always have super supportive friends and family? What were some of the experiences like that?
Yeah, there were lots of shifts. My family, my immediate family has always been very supportive. My wife has been incredibly supportive. I started my first commercial company about 6 months before our first child was born. So not really the most opportune time to say, all right, I'm leaving corporate world. I'm leaving the paycheck, and we're going to figure this out. Outside of that core group, you really got to scale down who's in your circle. And I learned that very quickly at a relatively young age. I was 26 when I started this version of myself, 27 when my son was born. I used to have a lot of fun getting drunk with the buddies and hanging out at bars. And there's a time and place for all that. And I'm not knocking it, but it quickly became, I quickly realized like this can't continue. Mm-hmm. And I have to really, really limit who I let into my house, so to speak. And, truth be told, that is clamped down, and it clamps down farther and farther as the farther I go. So the people that I associate with and that are in my inner circle are truly people that understand what I'm doing, or at least get why I'm doing it, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And when you went through some of the shifts, because one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is they're always so nervous about like losing their friends, and like, I don't want to cut people out of my life. And I think that stops a lot of people, honestly, from getting to the best version of themselves and stepping into whatever they feel they're called to do. What were some ways that maybe like some things you went through? Do you got any examples of anything you kind of went through and how you dealt with it, or anything that might help, someone that's listening?
I think it goes back to just being gritty and tough, and you have to set your priorities in life, right? And once I had a family of my own, it went from being just my wife and I with no kids, and I was just an irresponsible asshole, right? I could do whatever I wanted to all of a sudden now I've got little humans that depend on me and that I have to put food on their plate. And that shifts your mind. Well, in my case, it shifted my mindset very, very quickly. And I lost friends through this process, right? I mean, my best friend through high school, literally lives 2 minutes from my office, and I probably haven't seen the guy in 5 years. And it's not that we're not friends. We'll touch base once in a while, and we can kind of rap like we used to do, but there's just differences in mindset, and there's differences in priority. And if I'm not able to benefit my family, and I don't mean to sound callous, but that's the truth. If I can't benefit my family, then I need to shed that weight, because I don't have enough hours in the day. I don't have enough hours a day for what I do, let alone for adding in kind of things that don't benefit that in that realm. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk about it. We're still friends. I still consider him a buddy, but that's kind of where it ends. And it's a fact of life. I think you grow and you mature, and people move away, and bonds kind of stretch. And it's just, you have to be willing to deal with that.
That makes sense. And now you've talked a few times about grit. Seems to be a word of yours, which I like. But someone's listening to this and they're like, Matt, that's great. I don't have grit. I don't view myself like that. How do you think someone can grow, grow grit, get more gritty? How can someone work on that, do you think? What are some tangible ways to be able to go toward that?
Manual labor occupations, blue collar, badass jobs. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Had I never done what I did, had I not started on a job site, bleeding and getting dirty and moving lumber around, I never would have grown that. I wasn't a gritty kid. I wasn't I just wasn't, right? I was your normal.
You cried like the rest of us.
Yeah, I was just your typical guy. Manual labor and getting dirty and getting your hands dirty and your boots on, it changes a person. And like we've talked, I have 3 boys. My oldest is 15. We have these conversations very, very frequently that I don't care what he wants to do with his life, right? If he wants to go to college, great. Wants to be a doctor, fine. If he wants to own a construction company, he's crazy, but I'll support him. But he's going to work some sort of manual labor position in his early formative years, because I really think that it teaches you humility. It teaches you that grit, because you have to keep coming back, right? There are days at that level, especially, that are just miserable. I mean, in construction, you work in the rain, you work in the snow. In Michigan, especially, right? We have 6 months of not snow, and half of it's pouring rain. But you have to keep coming back. And I think that teaches you resilience. It teaches you how to fight back against your mind, right? And to keep showing up day after day, because there's a better thing at the end of it. Everything you want is on the other side of hard work, is what I try to teach my boys. And I believe it.
That makes sense. That's awesome. And as far as and I don't even know where you go on this, as far as, do you do much, do you have a solid morning routine? Do you feel like that plays a role? Do you feel reading? Do you feel audio? What are some other things that you feel play a role in success in general?
You nailed it. I have a very strict morning routine. I wake up at 4:30. I brush my teeth. I grab a cup of coffee. I read my 10 pages. I immediately go work out. Shower. By the time I'm done showering, my boys are ready to go to school, and I drive them to school every day. And without fail, if I stick to that routine, I am more productive. I am more efficient. I'm a better leader. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect, right? Over the summer, it got real easy to slack off, and I did. And if I miss a single day of doing my routine, it's like a landslide. And all of a sudden, that single day is now a month and a half, and I haven't done anything other than, I'm not a monster, but I haven't worked out, I haven't read, I haven't kept my head right. And everything suffers from that, from my personal life to my business. And so I've learned that, it's kind of I've done 75 hard. I loved it. It changed my life. It's kind of a modified, way easier version of that is my daily. I'm not that hardcore to do it constantly, but to have that structure and to know, all right, Matt, today, no matter what, we're getting these 5 things done before anyone else wakes up. And to me, that's huge, right? My day starts earlier than a lot of people. And by the time I'm done with my first day, everyone else is waking up, and I can be super dad. Then I get to take my kids to school every day. Right. That's, to me, that's awesome. Like, I have those, we call it our private meeting in my truck. But I can't do that effectively unless I'm up before and get everything else done.
I love that. So you mentioned, like, and I think a lot of people want to do that. They want to be disciplined. They want to get up in the morning. But you did mention, like, in the summer, you know, you're a little bit more slack. And I would say you're probably a very disciplined person as a whole, more than a lot of people, because you've worked on it for a long time. And so, you know, how do you, one of the things that I see people do is they beat themselves up. So when they don't do what they're supposed to do, they know what they're supposed to do, and they don't do it, then they beat themselves up, and then it takes them down a spiral. So what are some tips that maybe have helped you maybe not go down that spiral and just like, okay, let's just start again? Or have you gone down that spiral and then you have to like unspiral yourself? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I have gone down that. And I do. Every time I slip up, I go down that spiral, and I beat the crap out of myself mentally. And the self-talk and all the doubt. I mean, it's, and you know this, it's hard enough being an entrepreneur, right? It is hard work every single day. It is not for the weak. There's this huge imposter syndrome that I deal with every time I open my eyes. And when I'm in my routine, when I'm on my game, I can shut that off, and I just shove it out of the way, and my confidence is up, and I can keep creating, keep moving. When I slip, even a day, especially a month, it spirals out of control. And in my head, honestly, Angela, it becomes a dark, dark place to be. And it takes then 4 times as much work to kind of slap me out of it and get my head back to the point where when that alarm goes off at 4:30, I'm getting up, and it's one foot in front of the other. And that's how it works with me. You know, like, this summer was a perfect example. I took a month and a half off, not really by choice, but all of a sudden I was hitting my snooze button for like 2 hours. And it's stupid, right? It's not like even in good sleep, you're up every 9 minutes that the iPhone's buzzing. And I got to, it was actually the start of my kids' school year. And I finally just told them, like, this is enough. I am getting up, I'm getting back on routine. And the first day is horrible, right? Going from waking up at 6:30, 7 o'clock to getting up at 4:30, it punches you in the face, man. But I did it. And you do it once, and then your head starts kind of re-clicking in the right direction. And then I worked out, right? And then I got my reading in, and all this good stuff. I got my water, and I got to work. Everything starts happening. And then you win the day. And then you wake up the next day, and that damn alarm goes off at the same time. And you ignore all the dark, all the bad, and just do it. Just keep taking that step one after another. And eventually that 1 day, 2 day becomes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever I'm at now. And you just have to keep the momentum.
So what are some things that you think, and maybe you haven't even thought about this, but I'm curious, because like I said, I know a lot of times this is something I hear a lot of people, I know in my agency and just in general, kind of struggle with. So you just kind of said you went down that. What is something that might be able to get someone to shift out of that faster?
You know, personal development is a journey, right? And it's a journey I started really intently about 5 years ago. That helps you get out of those funks faster, right? When you spend time and quantifiable time and effort to better yourself, or at least to learn how to learn how other people are doing it. You start listening to the right stuff, right? Podcasts, the right speakers, you read the right books, stop watching TV, you know, start spending your time in ways that can actually move the needle. And at least then when you reach the point where your motivation's enough and where your head's ready to tell that other voice to zip it, like, you know, the roadmap already. Right. And I think that's, you kind of build that foundation so that when you're ready to take the leap, at least you know which way you're going, or which way you should go.
I love that. And just like, yeah, so I tell my team, like, become obsessive about personal growth. And the more you can do, the faster you'll move forward, period. So really, that's really tangible, helpful. And like I said, I think a lot of people struggle with that. You also did 75 hard, and that was probably pretty helpful in a lot of different areas, I'm guessing.
Changed my life 100%. So I did 75 hard through COVID. through the worst of the worst. I did 75 hard. I did phase 1. I did phase 2, and then I'll be honest, I copped out. I was too afraid that I couldn't complete phase 3, and I didn't do it, and that haunts me. And I'll get there.
You'll
someday.
get there. You'll come back. Yeah,
I'll get it, but it teaches you mental discipline and toughness, and that's the time management skills and the mindset shift I had from doing that. It's immeasurable, and it's hard to explain if you haven't done it, right? Like your whole mental shifts drastically, and all of a sudden you realize, like, wait a minute, I've been pissing and moaning about how busy I am and how little time I have to do things. When you stack another 5 tasks on top of that have to get done, and you realize you can do it, it's affirming, right? And it just starts building on top of that foundation. And all of a sudden you got a block wall on top of your foundation, and then you've got an entire building. And I can fall back on that at any point in time, knowing that, like, all right, I can do this. And even now, when I slump off of my routine, I don't go back to the 10-year ago Matt, right? I dropped to a level where I think I'm still doing better than a lot of people, and I'm still more disciplined than a lot of people. And that, to me, is a win. And if you haven't heard of 75 hard, or you haven't done it, I highly, highly recommend just check it out. People have mixed feelings about it. I promise you it won't be a waste of your time.
I agree with you 100%. I did it. And it was quite interesting. So yeah, it's a good thing. And I like your point of, like, when you do drop off, you don't drop off as much. And I think anyone listening to this is like, man, because people beat themselves up so much, and that's not helpful. And so, like, people are listening, they're like, well, I could never do that. I'm not like that. Why am I even trying? And I want you to know, if you're listening to this, as long as you're getting a little bit better every day, and then when you do, quote, drop off, maybe you just don't drop off as much as you used to drop off. Like, now you don't eat the whole gallon of ice cream. Maybe you eat half a gallon of ice cream. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, but that's a win. Like remember to celebrate your wins. And I think, kind of listening to you, I think a lot of people don't do that. And I feel like that's something that you're doing, and maybe not all the time, but at least in this moment. And that's a really important thing, even for me to take away and be able to go back to that, which is really cool. So
it's like rock climbing, right? Which is not something I do. I think it's crazy. But if you ever watch those people, like, they climb up a certain amount and then they stick in their little gizmo that they hook their rope to. So then when they fall, they're not falling all the way to the ground, right? And it's that mentality, that kind of analogy, rather. You keep climbing up a little bit and stick your little thing in the rock, and now you don't have as far to fall. And as long as you keep doing that, and you mentioned celebrating wins, that's big. I don't think any of us probably do that enough. I know I don't, but it's you got to reaffirm yourself that what you're doing is worth it.
What are some things, if you have done any of that? I'm actually curious. What are some things that you have done to celebrate some wins? Have you done anything? Like, does your wife make you do something? Does she help, like, with the family? Like, what are some ways you've celebrated some wins? You've had a lot of wins over the last, however many years, 25 plus years. What are some things you've done to celebrate them?
So my wife, Carrie, is great, because she will be the one to be like, what the heck is wrong with you? Like, you just did X or did Y and Z. Like, why aren't you bouncing out of your shoes? And she'll be the one to, like, slow me down, right? Because I put my head down, I just start running until I can't. And so she'll slow me down. And it's over the last few years, especially, truth be told, we've reached a level financially where we can celebrate a little bit. We take the kids down to Florida every year. We're actually going at the end of October, right smack where the damn hurricane just came through. But that's another story. But taking time to just step back and enjoy each other, enjoy our family. And with the business, I've reached a point, and it has been a struggle, but I've reached a point where I can step out of here for a week and the place doesn't burn down.
Amazing.
It's amazing. And that has allowed me to, like, start kind of celebrating, but we have wins all the time. We sign contracts, and, I don't go on vacation every time we sign a contract by any means, but, it used to be just like, all right, next, now let's go. Now it's at least, gather up the team. Let's go get dinner. Let's go bowling, or, we try and do stuff just to just take that brief moment to be like, listen, this is why we do this. It is not just get up every day, 9 to 5, go home and hate life. It is, we're building communities, we're building each other up, and we're building ourselves. And if you don't take time to at least enjoy it, what the hell's the point, right?
Mm-hmm. Man, that's so good. I love that. That's gold right there. Yeah, make sure you celebrate the little wins and take your team out or take yourself out, and it doesn't have to go out. It doesn't have to be about money. Like, it can be like the dollar ice cream store or something. You can tell I'm on an ice cream thing. Like, that's my thing. But whatever it is, you could, do something little, maybe go for a Frappuccino thingy majiggy at Starbucks. I don't know, one of those, treat yourself to, some specialty drink that's like $20 or whatever they are. Anyway, you can do something like that too, which is awesome. So, in wrapping up, I always ask 3 final questions, and then anything that you think, would be great for our listeners to hear that might be able to help them. So, first final question is, someone's looking for their purpose. What's one sentence that you would say that could help them find it?
Find a purpose, huh? I think there's a quote by a guy, and I butcher this because I can never remember his name. He was an ex-US Olympic wrestling coach. And his quote was, "The only thing you ever start at the top is digging a hole." And I read that a long time ago, and I use it a lot. I think that's what you have to remember. And purpose, I think, finds you. I don't think you can go and fish for your purpose and pull it out of the sea and just be amazed one day with this vision you have. I think you have to keep working on yourself and keep getting yourself better as a human. Mm-hmm. And eventually your purpose will find you. And, you're going to have to toil with it, right? You start at the bottom, and we all do. No matter what industry we're looking for or what we're trying to do, you don't get to start at the top. And I think as long as you work and you have that work ethic, and I'll say it again, the grit, then your purpose will find you.
That's so good. Second question, you did say a quote, but maybe there's another one. What's a favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote, and I'm actually thinking about getting it tattooed on my arms, is by Ed Milet. Procrastination is a thief and fear is a liar. I heard him say that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and it quite literally changed the way I look at everything I do. It's changed my personal life, my business life. You have to stop being afraid of taking the leaps, right? Because we're not promised tomorrow, not a single one of us. And if you can't do today what you really want to do, you're not guaranteed to get that chance ever again. And that would be it. Once I get it tattooed, I'll send you pictures.
I love it. That's so cool. And third question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Amazing husband, father, and friend.
I love that. That's awesome. So if you run into someone in this fancy coffee shop where we're having this Frappuccino, and they're like, "Man, Matt, that was such a good podcast. I got so much. I'm learning about grit and all this stuff." What's something that you didn't touch on that you just think, we really should impact into our listeners?
We kind of started down the road, but not really. But the blue collar world is under attack. Mm-hmm. It has been under attack for decades. Across the world, in America especially, we fight very, very hard in my industry to create enticing jobs and to bring youth into the trades, to make the trades cool again. And I could talk about that for days on end. I talk with local high schools and colleges. We need people to be blue collar employees. We need it. The country cannot proceed without it. And we've allowed politics and education and all sorts of stuff that I don't want to get into today to kind of ruin that, and to squish the mentality that those jobs and those occupations are worth it. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to get back to the realization that they're not just worth it, but they're imperative. And as a society, inside and outside of construction, mm-hmm. we have to change that change that mentality that somehow blue collar work and digging a hole is bad and is not becoming of a adult. It's a collision course that we're on. We've been on it for a long time, but again, I'm sorry for the rabbit hole, but that's it. I could talk forever about it. I think it's crucial to our success as humanity, really.
I love that. That's so good. I believe that that's true. I know I used to build houses and do everything blue collar. So there's nothing wrong with the blue collar world for anyone listening. There definitely isn't. If you're young and you're like, I don't know where to go, nothing wrong at all. In fact, I think it is, when you mentioned having grit, I think you do get a lot of it from that, and just hard work out there where you're just like grinding and sweating and bleeding and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really good. Thank you so much for being on, Matt. As always, listeners, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, follow Matt. We'll have all of his information in the show notes. Let's go out there and let's change one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one person at a time together, we can change the world. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you, Angela.